Liara had never known boredom before. As the daughter of one of the wealthiest families on Zephyra Prime, her life had been filled with endless luxuries: crystal towers that glimmered like stars, hover chariots that glided over the city streets, and servants who anticipated her every need. Yet, no matter how dazzling her surroundings were, she felt an emptiness that wealth could not fill. Every smile she received, every word of admiration, felt hollow. People admired her for her status, her beauty, or her rare, jewel-like eyes that shone with a light no one else could possess. But did anyone ever care about her as a person? She had asked this question quietly to herself many times while sitting in the high balcony of her family's palace. The stars sparkled in the distance. But even their distant beauty seemed meaningless when everything around her was shaped by expectation and obligation. She wanted to know if there were people who could care for her without being influenced by wealth or rank. She wanted to see genuine kindness, the kind that comes from the heart, not from admiration of her family's fortune. Liara's mind raced with ideas, and finally, one daring thought stayed with her. What if she could hide her identity? What if she could see the world as ordinary people did, stripped of the influence her wealth gave her? Could she find someone who would help her purely because they wanted to, not because they hoped for reward or favor? The thought thrilled and frightened her at the same time. For weeks, she prepared. She selected a cloak of rough fabric, torn at the edges, to hide her elegant attire underneath. She practiced walking in worn shoes that pinched her feet, and she studied the gestures and expressions of beggars she had passed by in the city. She learned how to fold her hands, how to look down and appear weary, how to speak softly without drawing attention. Finally, she acquired a small pack to carry just enough provisions to make her disguise believable: a few pieces of stale bread, a water flask, and a blanket. Her family's jewels and clothing remained behind, locked safely in her private chamber. Early one morning, when the streets of Zephyra Prime were alive with merchants, traders, and travelers from distant planets, Liara slipped out of her palace quietly. The city sprawled endlessly, towers of crystal glinting in the light of twin suns. She felt the first pang of excitement mixed with anxiety. For the first time, she was invisible in a world that always watched her. She was no longer Liara, daughter of a wealthy family. She was just another face among many. The first hours were difficult. People pushed past her without notice. Some muttered insults, and others laughed when they thought she wouldn't hear. She clutched her pack tightly and moved from alley to alley, trying to stay unnoticed. Her stomach tightened with hunger, but more than that, she felt the sharp sting of isolation. She had expected some kindness, some helping hand, but there was none. Her heart sank, and doubt crept in. Was kindness truly so rare? She wandered toward the marketplace, where merchants displayed exotic fruits that glowed with internal light, fabrics that shimmered like liquid metal, and gadgets that hovered and changed shape with a thought. People rushed past her, eyes fixed on the luxury around them, indifferent to the struggling figure in tattered clothes. One merchant nearly tripped over her, then glared and muttered something that made her ears burn. She thought about retreating, about giving up her experiment, but curiosity and stubbornness drove her forward. She wanted to see if anyone at all, would care. It was then that she first saw him. Ethan was a human, visiting Zephyra Prime for trade. He was tall and lean, with a calm presence that seemed to make the chaos around him fade slightly. His eyes, a warm brown, scanned the crowd carefully. He noticed Liara immediately, not for her appearance, but for her struggle. She was trying to lift her heavy pack over a step, wobbling under its weight. Other passers-by barely glanced, yet Ethan walked toward her with measured steps. "Here, let me help you with that," he said gently, reaching out to steady the pack. Liara was startled. No one had spoken to her like that in hours. without impatience, without mockery. "Oh, thank you," she mumbled, barely able to meet his gaze. She kept her hood low, hiding her eyes, but something about the calm in his voice felt genuine. He smiled kindly and adjusted her pack so that it rested evenly on her back. "There, that's better. You'll hurt yourself if you keep carrying it like that." For the first time in what felt like days, Liara felt a warmth in her chest. It wasn't wealth or status. It was simple human decency. She watched him move on to buy a drink, and when he returned, he offered it to her. She hesitated, but his smile encouraged her. She sipped the cool liquid, feeling its refreshing taste. Over the next few days, Liara continued her wandering, and Ethan seemed to appear repeatedly, often by coincidence, always offering help without question. Once, when she struggled to reach a high shelf at a market stall, he lifted her easily. Another time, when a hover cart nearly toppled onto her, he shoved her out of the way just in time, taking the minor hit himself. Liara watched in awe as he helped others too, never seeking attention or reward. One evening, she found a quiet corner in a small park, far from the bustling markets. Ethan sat on a bench nearby, sharing bread with a stray alien creature. Liara watched from the shadows, a mix of admiration and wonder stirring inside her. She realized something remarkable. This human didn't care about her appearance, about wealth, or rank. He helped simply because it was the right thing to do. Liara returned to the palace each night, exhausted but exhilarated. She reflected on the day's experiences, writing notes in a small journal she carried. She recorded not only her observations of the city, but also her thoughts about human behavior. She found herself comparing it to her own society, where every act of kindness seemed calculated, performed with an expectation of return. Here, with Ethan and the humans she glimpsed, kindness was effortless, pure, and unpretentious. Despite the exhaustion, she couldn't stop thinking about him. She wondered if she could learn more, not only about humans, but about what it truly meant to care for someone without expecting anything. She wondered if this simple quality, so rare in her world, could ever influence her own people. The next morning, Liara ventured further from familiar streets, determined to see more of the city through her disguise. She wandered into neighborhoods she had never visited, where the streets were narrower and the buildings older. Here, life was harsher. Children played in dusty alleys, scavenging for scraps, while adults argued over small trades. She saw cruelty and apathy again, the way she had in the markets. Yet through it all, she noticed small acts of quiet kindness, someone sharing water, someone helping a child up after a fall. These acts were brief, almost unnoticed, but they gave her hope, and then she saw him again. Ethan was speaking gently to an elderly alien who struggled to carry groceries. He offered a hand, helped lift the heavy bags, and walked with the alien to their small home. He didn't hesitate. And he didn't expect thanks. Liara's heart swelled. She felt something unfamiliar, admiration that went deeper than simple fascination. She wanted to understand him, to understand the source of his kindness. For the first time, she realized that wealth, power, and beauty were not what made someone remarkable. What mattered was character, the ability to care without expectation, to act with empathy, and to see people for who they were, not what they could offer. Ethan embodied all of these qualities, and Liara felt a growing desire to know more about him, and through him, about the world he came from. As the sun set over Zephyra Prime, casting golden light across the crystal towers, Liara found herself sitting on a quiet ledge, watching the city. The bustling streets below no longer seemed oppressive. Instead, they felt alive, filled with possibility. She had discovered something that money could not buy: hope. Hope that genuine kindness existed. Hope that someone could see beyond appearances, and hope that maybe, just maybe, she could learn to carry that light into her own life, and perhaps one day, into her society. The first day of her experiment had taught her many things. She had learned that the world could be indifferent and harsh. She had learned that kindness was rare, but when it appeared, it shone brighter than any crystal tower, and most importantly, she had learned that humans, despite being far from her own kind, could teach lessons that wealth and privilege never could. Liara made a quiet promise to herself as she returned to her palace that night. She would continue her experiment. She would continue her disguise. She would observe and learn. And she would discover if there were others like Ethan, people whose hearts were as genuine as his. Perhaps one day she could bring that knowledge back to her own world, showing them a way to value compassion over status, empathy over wealth. For now, though, she was content. She was invisible, wandering through a city that had never truly seen her before. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. Liara woke early the next morning, her mind buzzing with the events of the previous day. She could not stop thinking about Ethan, the human who had shown her something rare and beautiful, true kindness. She wanted to see more, to understand why his heart was different from so many others she had met. She dressed in her beggar's disguise once again, adjusted her pack, and slipped out into the city streets before the sun had fully risen. The streets were quieter in the early hours, with only a few merchants setting up stalls and a handful of citizens moving about their morning routines. Liara felt a strange sense of freedom, walking unnoticed among people who had never seen her before. She moved carefully, observing, taking mental notes of behavior, reactions, and interactions. Every small gesture fascinated her, the way a mother smoothed her child's hair, the way a worker helped a stranger carry a heavy bundle, the way people smiled at each other with genuine warmth. It wasn't long before she saw Ethan. He was near the market square speaking with a merchant about trade goods. His attention, however, was not entirely on the merchant. It was on his surroundings. He moved with awareness, noticing people who struggled or seemed in need. When he saw a young alien boy trip over a stone and fall to the ground, Ethan was immediately at his side, helping him up and checking if he was hurt. Liara hid behind a stall, watching, her heart warming with admiration. Every small action he took was deliberate but natural, motivated not by recognition, but by genuine care. Curiosity pushed her to follow him. She stayed at a distance, careful not to reveal herself, yet close enough to observe. Ethan helped a street performer set up a small show, guided an elderly alien across a busy street, and shared water with a thirsty animal. Liara realized that kindness, in its purest form, did not demand attention or reward. It was simply a choice, made again and again, without hesitation. Later, Ethan stopped at a small alleyway where a group of children played with broken toys. Some of the toys had sharp edges or missing parts, yet the children laughed, making the best of what little they had. Ethan knelt down and handed them a few simple toys he had bought earlier, not drawing attention to himself, just making sure they had something to enjoy. Liara felt a pang of emotion. She had never seen anyone give so freely without expecting praise. It struck her that perhaps this was the kind of world she had been missing, the world where human kindness could exist without calculation or ulterior motive. As the day passed, Liara found herself drawn to Ethan again and again. She observed how he treated everyone equally, the wealthy, the poor, the alien, and even other humans. No one was too insignificant for his attention, no one too different to be excluded. It was a pattern she had never seen in her own society, where wealth and status decided a person's worth. Liara began to understand that humans had something rare, the ability to see value in everyone, regardless of background or appearance. At one point, Ethan noticed her struggling with her pack again. Without hesitation, he came to her side, adjusting it and offering a smile. "Here, let me help. You'll hurt your back carrying it like that," he said kindly. Liara felt a flutter of surprise. How did he keep noticing her, yet never question her circumstances? How did he treat her like anyone else, even when she was vulnerable? She did not answer. She simply allowed him to help, grateful for his presence. After helping her, Ethan turned and continued on his way, but Liara stayed hidden, her mind racing. She wanted to learn more, to understand this human, to see if his kindness was genuine in every situation. She wondered if she could learn to bring this same compassion back to her own world, where people's hearts were often blinded by status and wealth. In the afternoon, she decided to venture into a part of the city she had not visited before. It was an older district, with narrow streets and buildings that leaned on one another like tired friends. Here, the air smelled of smoke and cooked food, mixed with dust and stone. Life was harsher here, yet she observed moments of care and attention despite the struggles. A young woman shared a loaf of bread with a neighbor who had none. A man stopped to help a child fix a broken toy. Even in difficulty, there was generosity. Ethan appeared again, this time assisting an elderly alien carrying heavy supplies. He walked with the alien to their small home, carefully placing the items inside. Liara watched quietly, hiding behind a corner. His actions were the same as before, calm, patient, and entirely without expectation. She began to realize that humans like Ethan were not rare by accident. They chose kindness, and it became a habit of the heart. Liara's experiment began to take on new meaning. It was no longer just about finding someone who would treat her with care despite her appearance. It was about discovering a way of life that valued compassion and empathy above all else. She wondered if humans could teach her something that could change not only her own perspective, but potentially the society she lived in. She wanted to understand what motivated Ethan, what shaped his worldview, and how she could bring even a fraction of that understanding back to her own people. As evening approached, Liara found a quiet spot to rest. She sat on a worn stone bench, watching as the city slowly transformed under the light of the twin moons. The glow of the crystal towers softened, and lanterns flickered to life along the streets. She reflected on her experiences, replaying the day in her mind. Each encounter with Ethan reinforced the lessons she had observed. Kindness was not about reward, empathy was not about recognition, and true care for others came naturally when the heart was aligned with goodness. She remembered the first time she had seen him help the boy in the street. It had seemed like a small gesture, almost insignificant in the chaos of the city, yet it left a mark on her. Every act, no matter how minor, was a demonstration of character. She realized that these small actions created ripples, spreading warmth and hope in ways that wealth and power could never achieve. Liara's thoughts drifted to her own world. She thought about her family, her friends, and the people who constantly surrounded her with praise and flattery. How much of it was real? How much was performance, designed to gain favor or recognition? She began to see the difference clearly. In her society, acts of kindness were rare and often calculated. In Ethan, and perhaps in humanity more broadly, kindness was natural, spontaneous, and powerful. As night fell, she watched Ethan from a distance as he helped a stray animal find food. He crouched down, speaking softly, and guided it toward a small dish he had prepared. The creature ate without fear, trusting him completely. Liara felt a deep sense of admiration and something else, a growing connection not of romance or affection, but of understanding. She understood that observing him was teaching her more than any book, any lecture, or any experience in her own life could. Liara returned to her hidden resting place, exhausted but filled with a quiet excitement. She knew that tomorrow she would continue her observations. that she would follow Ethan and learn more about the way humans interacted with the world. She realized that this experiment had changed her in subtle but significant ways. She felt more aware, more compassionate, and more hopeful than she had in years. Her thoughts lingered on one final moment before sleep took her. When Ethan had helped a small alien girl retrieve her lost toy, kneeling patiently as she cried with frustration. There had been no need for him to act, no expectation of reward, yet he had stayed with her until she smiled again. Liara understood then that genuine kindness required attention, patience, and a willingness to put another's needs above your own. It was a lesson she would never forget. As she drifted into sleep, she made a quiet promise to herself. She would continue her disguise, continue her observation, and continue learning. She wanted to discover if this human and others like him could teach her the true value of compassion. She wanted to carry these lessons back to her own society, to show her people that the heart could be richer than any treasure, and that genuine kindness could change lives in ways wealth never could. Tomorrow would bring new streets, new challenges, and perhaps new discoveries. But for now, Liara rested, her heart lightened by the knowledge that true goodness existed, and that sometimes it came in the form of a human who cared simply because it was the right thing to do. Liara awoke before sunrise, her heart beating with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Today, she had decided, she would reveal herself, not as the beggar she had disguised herself to be, but as who she truly was, Liara, daughter of one of the wealthiest families on Zyphera Prime. For weeks, she had watched Ethan with quiet fascination, learning about human kindness and discovering qualities in him that her own world had never taught her to value. Now she felt it was time to step forward, to let him see her true self. She dressed carefully, removing the tattered cloak and worn shoes. She chose elegant but simple attire that reflected her status without being ostentatious. Her jewel-like eyes, now visible without the disguise, glowed softly in the early morning light. She carried herself with the grace of her upbringing, yet with a new awareness, a humility that had grown from her time observing Ethan and the city streets. Liara made her way to the quiet garden where she had seen Ethan earlier, a place rarely visited by the city's bustling crowds. Lanterns hung from crystalline trees and soft light reflected off the petals of rare alien flowers. It was a serene place, the perfect setting for a moment that would change everything. She arrived early, sitting on a stone bench and waiting, her thoughts racing. Ethan appeared soon after, walking along the garden path with his usual calm presence. He noticed her immediately, yet there was no surprise in his expression. Perhaps he sensed her there. Perhaps he simply had the intuition to find those who needed help or companionship. He smiled warmly, unaware for now of the true identity of the woman before him. Liara stood and stepped toward him, her movements deliberate yet gentle. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice carrying a confidence she had never felt before in her life. He turned fully, surprise flickering in his eyes as he saw her face clearly for the first time. "You," he began, but words failed him. The figure he had known as a beggar was gone, replaced by a radiant young woman whose presence commanded attention, not through wealth, but through a quiet, undeniable dignity. Liara smiled, sensing his amazement, but also understanding that this was not about grandeur. "It is me," she said simply. "I have been watching you, learning from you. You have shown me something rare, something I had never seen in my own world, genuine kindness, compassion that comes without expectation." Ethan blinked, processing her words. He stepped closer, studying her expression. You were the one I kept seeing?" he asked, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity in his tone. "Yes," Liara admitted. "I wanted to know if someone could care for me without knowing who I am, without knowing my family, without knowing my wealth? And you? You have shown me that it is possible, that true kindness exists." Ethan's expression softened. "I helped because it was the right thing to do," he said quietly. "I never expected anything in return. That's all I know." "I did not know it would mean so much to someone else." Liara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that his actions had not been extraordinary. They had been simple, human acts, yet their impact was profound. She thought of all the times he had helped others, all the small gestures that went unnoticed, and she understood that his goodness was consistent, deliberate, and unpretentious. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the only sounds being the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city. Liara's heart swelled with admiration, and a thought crossed her mind. If the world could see humans like Ethan, who treated others with such care, perhaps it could change. Perhaps even her own society could learn that the value of a person was not in their wealth or status, but in their character. "I wanted to thank you," Liara said finally. "Not just for helping me, but for showing me what it means to care for someone without expectation. You have taught me more than anyone in my world ever has." Ethan looked at her steadily, a faint smile on his face. "I don't need thanks," he said. "I do what I can. I guess maybe it's just who I am." Liara nodded. She had expected that, but hearing it confirmed something deep inside her. Human goodness was not performative. It was natural. It was a choice, repeated every day, and it could be the foundation for something greater. Over the next few hours, they walked together through the garden, talking quietly. Liara told him about her life, her family, and her society. She spoke honestly, without embellishment, and he listened, never interrupting, never judging. In return, he told her about his own world, about humans and the challenges they faced, about the lessons he had learned from observing others and from his own experiences. Liara was fascinated by the contrasts between their worlds. Her society valued appearance, wealth, and power, while his valued empathy, courage, and honesty. She realized that humans could teach lessons that wealth alone could never convey. She felt a growing respect for him, not because of his strength or skill, but because of his integrity. As they continued to talk, a small crisis unfolded nearby. A young alien child had fallen into a shallow stream that ran through the garden, crying out for help. Liara's first instinct was panic, but Ethan acted immediately. Without hesitation, he waded into the water, lifted the child carefully, and brought them to safety. Liara watched, heart pounding, as he comforted the child with gentle words and a calm presence. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." The child clung to him, tears still streaming down their face, but their fear replaced with trust. Liara felt something shift inside her. She realized that kindness was not just about observing or thinking. It was about action, about being willing to step forward when others stayed behind. She had watched him do this countless times, and now she saw it in its purest form. When the child was safely returned to their family, Ethan turned to Liara. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. She wanted to express how much she had learned from him, how much his actions had changed her understanding of the world. "I've learned more from you than I can say," she admitted. "You've shown me that it is possible to be good without expectation, to care for others simply because it is right. I want to bring this lesson back to my own world. I want to change the way people see kindness. And perhaps I want to start with myself." Ethan studied her, then nodded. "That's a good goal," he said. "It's not easy, but it's worth it. If everyone did a little good without expecting anything, the world would be better." Liara smiled. She felt a sense of clarity she had never experienced before. She had come into the city seeking understanding, and she had found it, not through wealth, power, or influence, but through the quiet, consistent actions of a human who believed in doing what was right. As evening fell, Liara led Ethan to a quiet spot overlooking the city. The towers glimmered under the twin moons, casting reflections across the streets below. She felt a sense of wonder, realizing that even in a city obsessed with wealth and status, there could be moments of beauty, of goodness, of connection. "I want you to see the world as I see it," she said softly. "Not as a rich alien heiress, but as someone who wants to learn, to observe, and to carry kindness forward." Ethan looked at her, understanding in his eyes. "I already see it," he said, "and I see you too." Liara felt a thrill of emotion. For the first time, she realized that identity and status were secondary to the values a person held, the actions they chose, and the kindness they shared. She felt a connection to Ethan that transcended species, culture, and wealth. It was a connection built on trust, respect, and understanding. The kind of bond that could endure beyond appearances. They spent the night walking through the city streets, talking quietly, observing life around them. Liara felt a sense of freedom she had never known, walking not as a princess bound by expectation, but as a learner, an observer, and a friend. She realized that her journey had changed her profoundly. She no longer sought validation through wealth or status. She sought understanding, growth, and the chance to share the lessons she had learned. When they returned to the garden, Liara looked up at the stars, reflecting on everything she had experienced. She had come seeking proof that genuine kindness existed, and she had found it. Not in grand gestures or heroic acts, but in the small, consistent choices that Ethan made every day. She understood now that these choices were powerful, capable of influencing lives, shaping societies, and inspiring change. Ethan turned to her, smiling. "You've learned a lot," he said. "Yes," Liara replied, her voice steady, "and I will continue to learn. I want to carry this forward, to live by what I've observed, and to show others that kindness is stronger than wealth, that empathy is more valuable than power." Ethan nodded. "Then you're already on the right path." Liara felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for his actions, but for the lessons they represented. She realized that her experiment had not only revealed the truth about human kindness, but had also revealed the strength and courage within herself, the ability to see beyond appearances, to value goodness, and to embrace change. As the first light of dawn touched the city, Liara knew that her life would never be the same. She had discovered the rarest treasure, genuine human kindness, and it had opened her eyes to a new way of seeing the world. With Ethan by her side as a guide and friend, she felt ready to carry these lessons back to her own society, to inspire change, and to live a life shaped by compassion, empathy, and understanding. And for the first time, Liara felt truly free.